Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wist. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know.
Paul Talbot, thank you for returning to my show, Mystic and Severe, to talk about Charles Bronson once again. I thought it would be fun to talk about Charles Bronson's acting career in the 1950s before he did The Magnificent Seven. Tell me what you know about his parents' story, and is it true that Charles Bronson did not speak English as a child?
Well, I think it's like when he was a child, his parents were immigrants. They were from, trying to think right now, not Lithuania. That's where it's from. They were immigrants from Lithuania. So when he grew up, he grew up speaking that Lithuanian, and then when he did speak English, he had a very strong, it was almost like kind of a Polish-like accent or sort of a Russian-type accent. So he grew up in a coal mining community and really didn't, it wasn't until he got drafted in the Army that he started, I guess, improving his English. When he first got in the Army, a lot of people really couldn't understand him, so he was really shy about talking. And when he started taking acting classes, he really worked on that. He worked on his diction, where he really learned to break each word down. That's why when you watch his movies, he has like a very kind of like a strange vocal inflection, almost like a kind of a Russian type inflection. He says a lot of pronounces things a lot of words very differently.
Oh, that's interesting. So what impact do you think serving in the United States Army Air Forces during World War II had on his gritty characteristics that we see in cinema?
Yeah, I think, of course, he grew up, of course, he was in World War II, so needless to say, he had a rough childhood, and then, of course, being in World War II, of course, you had to be a really tough guy. He also grew up when he was a teenager. He was really into physical fitness, so he was in really good shape, practiced on the way he walked and things like that. So I think, and he also was a boxer. He was a boxer in the Army, and of course got in several fist fights while he was in the Army and while he was growing up. So certainly the Army added to his, I guess, physical persona.
So tell me about Charles Bronson's very first film roles. What do you think made this tough guy want to act?
Well, he started, he actually, in the Army, when he graduated the Army, he used the GI Bill to study painting. He was a painter. He liked doing that. He wanted to actually work in plays painting the backdrops. And then he found out that the actors who were on stage were making more money. So he actually went into acting originally to make more money. So he started studying theater. He moved in late 1950. He moved with his first wife to California, started studying acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, and he did many plays there. That's where he first started his acting training. And in 1951, one of his acting teachers knew that the director Henry Hathaway was directing a movie called USS Tea Kettle, starring Gary Cooper, and he needed rough-looking guys to play the Navy men, the seamen, and the acting teacher recommended Charles Bronson, and Charles Bronson interviewed and got his first part in the movie U.S. Tea Kettle, starring Gary Cooper.
Oh, that's cool. Can you tell me about that movie?
Yeah, it was kind of a light movie, kind of like a what do you call it? Almost kind of like a naval comedy, not total comedy, but kind of like not really an action comedy. One of those, maybe like, I guess the movie Mr. Roberts with Henry Fonda. I guess kind of close to that type movie, or sort of like the TV series McHale's Navy, kind of like a naval type comedy.
What about the Abbott and Costello one when they joined the Navy?
Yeah, Abbott and Costello in the Navy. I guess not as broad as that one,
right?
But that could sort of be like that.
Okay, so tell me about Charles Bronson's very first film roles that are worth revisiting.
Okay, yeah, I made a list of the notable ones that I think are notable in the 1950s. Again, he made his first movie in 1951. That was USS Tea Kettle. His second movie was a movie called The People Against O'Hara. He had a tiny role in that. He was only in one scene, but that was notable because it was directed by John Sturges, who later directed later directed The Magnificent Seven, which of course gave one of Bronson's most important roles. Sturges also later directed Bronson in Never So Few, which was a army movie with Frank Sinatra, and also directed The Great Escape, which of course is another classic Bronson film. And then also directed The Valdez Horses, which was a 1973 Italian Western. So The People Against O'Hara, although it was a small role, that was important because it first brought him to the attention of John Sturges, who directed some of his most important later films. In 1952, Bronson was in the movie Pat and Mike, which was directed by George Cukor. It starred Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. That was important because he, again, it was a major film with big stars. He plays a comic gangster in that one. So that one's interesting because kind of showed his lighter side.
Mm. What about TV shows?
I got a whole list of the TV shows too. During the 1950s, Bronson appeared in over 47 episodes. He was the guest on over 47 different TV episodes on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Gunsmoke, M Squad with Lee Marvin, Have Gun Will Travel with Richard Boone. So did a lot of work in the 1950s. He was constantly working. Also most important in the 1950s, from 1958 to 1960, Bronson started his own series called Man with a Camera. He played a freelance photographer named Mike Kovac, who each week got involved with a different adventure. It was a 30-minute series, a very interesting series. In fact, it's not too hard to find. They were on Netflix. Now I think on YouTube you can find all of them.
It's all on YouTube. Every episode.
Every episode good, yeah. So if you're a fan of Charles Bronson, at least watch a few episodes of Man with a Camera to show his early work. That was a good, tight action show. Each episode's only it's a 30-minute. Well, of course, 30 minutes with commercials, so it probably only takes you 20, 25 minutes to watch an episode now. But those are good to show early work of Charles Bronson. He also plays a tough guy in it, but also has some light moments in that too.
I'm a big fan of Crime Wave and House of Wax. Two movies he did directed by Andre Dadath.
That's right.
So can you tell my audience a bit about Andre Dadath and his relationship with Charles Bronson?
Sure. 1953, they made the movie House of Wax, which was one of the first major 3D films. Also, I think one of the first major films made with stereo sound. So that was a huge hit. And Bronson actually got, again, at this time, Bronson was known for his face, that very distinctive, almost scary face. So in House of Wax, he plays Vincent Price's mute henchman, never smiles, never says anything. So that face is really scary throughout that movie. And that, again, was a huge hit. Important about that film is Walter Mirisch, who was a major Hollywood producer, he visited the set of House of Wax, and he noticed Bronson, thought he had an interesting face, followed his career. And then years later, when Walter Mirisch was producing The Magnificent Seven, he thought of Bronson and cast him in that film. So House of Wax. Interesting about House of Wax also, once Bronson became a star in the late 60s and early 70s, a lot of his movies were re-released, giving Bronson prominent billing. So when House of Wax came out, re-released in the early 1970s, it said in big letters starring Vincent Price and Charles Bronson. Even though at the time, it's interesting, his real name was Charles Buczynski. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until 1954 that he started using the name Charles Bronson. So House of Wax was one of the films where he's billed as Charles Buczynski, which nowadays people watch the movie and they know Charles Bronson's in it, but they watch the movie, they're like, wait a minute, Charles Bronson's not even billing in it, doesn't even get billing in it. But they don't realize, yes, just he's billed as Charles Buczynski in that film.
So I heard he changed his name because of the House of Un-American Activities Committee was putting pressure on every actor, and he was worried that people would affiliate him within the Red Scare. So so that's one of the stories, is that he was afraid that he would be tied in with the Red Scare. Another story was they thought that, he felt, and his neighbors felt, or not his neighbors, his agent felt that Buczynski was kind of a difficult name to remember.
So one day he was driving down through Hollywood, and there's a street called Bronson. So he saw that, and that gave him the idea to change the name to Charles Bronson, which I guess fits him better. Charles Buczynski kind of is difficult to pronounce, whereas Charles Bronson is a really forceful, memorable
Very American.
name. That's right. Yep.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of Machine Gun Kelly. It's a psychologically understandable story that plays well for any generation, in my opinion.
Right.
Was this Charles Bronson's first good leading role for film, in your opinion?
Yeah, in fact, let me see. I've got, in 1958, Bronson starred. He was the lead in 3 very excellent low-budget films. There was Machine Gun Kelly, which you just mentioned, directed by Roger Corman, in which he played the real-life gangster of the 1930s. And even though that movie, again, didn't break him into the American market, it didn't really get him noticed because, of course, in America, just played mostly drive-ins and smaller theaters. That film, when it came out, it was a huge cult hit in France. So at that point in France, Bronson was already developing a cult following over there. And in fact, the famous French actor Alain Delon was a fan of Machine Gun Kelly and of Bronson's performance. So when Alain Delon was looking for a male co-star for Farewell Friend in 1968, he remembered Bronson from Machine Gun Kelly and cast him in that film, which, of course, that was the film that started to launch Bronson as a international screen icon. Farewell Friend was. Right, sure is. And the other movie, so in 1958, Bronson starred in 3 low-budget films, Machine Gun Kelly, and also Showdown at Boot Hill, which is a Western, an excellent widescreen Western, directed by Gene Fowler Jr., in which Bronson plays a U.S. Deputy Marshal / bounty hunter. That's, again, Showdown at Boot Hill. In fact, that one actually is on Blu-ray. Didn't get too much attention, but it came out on Blu-ray, a really nice widescreen presentation on Blu-ray. That's another one to look for if you're a Bronson fan, one of his early works. And the third film that came out in 1958, in which Bronson was the lead, was Gang War, again directed by Gene Fowler Jr. It's sort of a forerunner to Death Wish. Bronson plays kind of a meek high school teacher. He witnesses a murder by a gangster, and he tells the police about it, so the police go after Bronson and his wife. So it's kind of like a forerunner to Death Wish, whereas this guy, a meek guy, gets unwittingly involved with crime, and his family suffers because of it, and the police are ineffective or won't help him, so he has to kind of take the law into his own hand. So Gang War is the name of that film.
Got to check that out. What would make a great 1950s Charles Bronson double bill?
1954, he made the movie Apache, which was directed by Robert Aldrich, which is a Western starring Burt Lancaster. That was the first of Bronson's many roles as a Native American. Another one in which he played a Native American, 1954, he made a movie called Drumbeat, directed by Delmer Daves. It starred Alan Ladd, and that's a fantastic movie. That was the first movie in which he was billed as Charles Bronson. In that movie, Bronson plays a villainous Native American named Captain Jack. And it's a great performance. In fact, it should have gotten him stardom and an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, but he got neither. But that's one I always encourage everybody to check out, Drumbeat, in which he plays a Native American. And then there was Run of the Arrow, 1957, directed by Samuel Fuller. Bronson again plays the Native American in that one. Rod Steiger is the star of that one. So those 3 would make a really good triple bill. Drumbeat, Apache, and Run of the Arrow. Those are 3 excellent 1950 era Westerns in which Bronson plays Native American. So that would make a nice triple bill.
Well, I'll have to try that out sometime. Are there other movies in your notes that you want to mention?
Yeah, let me see. Tennessee Champ from 1953. He plays a boxer in that. That one has a good fight scene. I don't know if that one's on Blu-ray. I know somebody did upload the fight scene on YouTube. So again, that's Tennessee Champ. Go to Netflix and YouTube and put in Tennessee Champ Charles Bronson, and that'll pull up the fight scene. Let's see the other ones. One important thing about Apache, I mentioned that when he plays a Native American, directed by Robert Aldrich. And that was important because Robert Aldrich later cast Bronson in Veracruz, which is another Western, Four for Texas, another Western, and most importantly, The Dirty Dozen.
Ooh.
And 1954, Veracruz, another Western, starring Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster. Bronson is in a trio of villains with Ernest Borgnine and Jack Elam. That's a great trio, so that should be watched for that reason. That one's called again Veracruz. And 1959, Big House USA, a low-budget prison escape film in which Bronson plays a convict who shares a cell with Broderick Crawford, Ralph Meeker, and Lon Chaney Jr. So that there's a strange quartet of tough guys.
Ralph Meeker's fantastic.
Yep, sure is. And let me see which other one. Jubal, a 1956 Western directed by Delmer Daves, who directed Drumbeat. That's a Western starring Glenn Ford. And in that one, Bronson plays a ranch hand, a very low-key ranch hand, a very nice, gentle guy in that one. So that one's interesting if you want to see a different side of Bronson. And let me see what else I had. And I guess that's it. That's why I made my list there of the notable Charles Bronson films of the 1950s.
He was on the Hitchcock show more than once, right?
Yeah, he was on Hitchcock 3 times. In the 1950s, the episode he was in, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, he has a really good episode in which he plays a police detective and he's trying to solve a murder and he interviews a ventriloquist played by Claude Rains. So that one's, it was on, I know it's on DVD and Blu-ray, so you can find it on that, but that's an excellent episode that he was on. And then he was in it twice again, I think. Let me check my list. I think his other episodes were in the he was in 2 episodes in the 1950s and 1 episode in the 1960s. So altogether, he was in 3 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock.
Well, this has been an interesting exercise because when I think of Charles Bronson, I definitely, think about Death Wish and The Mechanic and stuff like that. But, I always loved Machine Gun Kelly and Crime Wave. So to go back and to re-examine this period of time, I think is super interesting. Is there some sort of lesson from this period of time in his career, or is there a final thing you want to say about his early days acting before I let you go?
Yeah, like you said, it's interesting. He had a long career. Of course, he didn't become a star until the late 60s. So he was in his late 40s or when he became a star, which is certainly a very advanced age for somebody to become a star at. So it's really incredible how long it took him to become a star. And yet, his career before that was really incredible. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, most of his films made in the 1950s, even the ones that he didn't have the leading role, most of them were all re-released over in Europe in the late 60s, early 70s with his name over the title, even in movies in which he just had a small part in. So, and what about you, Michael? What are your what is some of your other favorite Bronson stuff from the 1950s?
Oh my God! Well, you're the expert, my friend. I think I like Machine Gun Kelly is the one that really jumps out to me as something notable. I saw A Man with a Movie Camera. I saw a couple episodes of that. I think I'm going to watch both seasons since they're available on YouTube now. And I think it's just part of the mystique because we think of him as an old school guy, like you say, he became a star later in life, and he is that salt of the earth alpha male, or maybe not alpha male, but he's just one of the silent tough guys, great silent tough guys out there. It's right. History.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about Machine Gun Kelly is his character's like psychologically disturbed. He's almost like a coward at some point. So that's interesting to see him play a sort of like a vulnerable gangster, I guess is the best way to put it. So
That's what I like about
that
the
one-
character. He's tough as nails, and then it turns out all to be an act. He's a paper tiger, right?
Exactly.
And of course, I love Roger Corman. He's great.
What about how did you discover that one, Machine Gun Kelly? Do you remember like what made you?
I was just watching Roger Corman movies.
Right.
I was just watching a lot of 1950s Roger Corman movies, and that one really stuck out. Instead of like the crab monsters and everything like that,
Right.
which is fun and everything. But this one had a lot of. I found it psychologically profound. Was he in the Marion type?
Yeah, no, Bronson's not in that. No.
Oh no. Okay. I don't know. And I love just 1950s crime movies, really. Crime Wave as well. Audrey the Dot is a cool.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Michael. You were right. He is in the Marion Kind. I'm sorry. Bronson is in that. Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, do you have a final word you'd like to say? Do you have another book coming out of Charles Bronson, or is two enough for you?
Yeah. Well, I've actually, I would love to do another book on Bronson. I do have lots of material enough to do it, so we'll see what happens. It's like nowadays, I get a lot of offers to do these commentary tracks. So that's what everybody likes nowadays. It's like nobody likes to read anymore. Everybody just likes to, listen or watch stuff. So I'm staying really busy with that. On January 25th, which I guess is a week from tomorrow, 2 Bronson Blu-rays are coming out from the company Indicator in the UK. 2 Blu-rays. One is of the Valachi Papers, the 1972 mafia movie, which is fantastic. That's probably one of Bronson's greatest performances. He plays a mob figure, and the film covers over 30 years. So we see his character age from 26 to 60. So that's coming out. The Valachi Papers, it looks and sounds fantastic. I did the commentary track for it, and it has lots of extras. It has actual newsreel footage of the real Valachi. It has behind-the-scenes footage. It has an interview with the screenwriter, interview with the makeup artist. So it's loaded. Also that same day, also from Indicator, is the Bronson Western, The Valdez Horses, also known as Chino, a Blu-ray of that. And again, that one's very difficult to find. That one kind of became almost like public domain in the United States. So you could find it on literally hundreds of VHS and DVD, but all in terrible copies. This is finally presenting it in a good quality copy. And this is the first time it's ever been released in the original aspect widescreen ratio anywhere in the world on physical media. So the Valdez Horses, again, I did the commentary track for that one. And it also has lots of extras on that one. So for that one thing I do, in addition to commentary tracks, I'm also producing a lot of the interview featurettes. So for both of those Blu-rays, I interviewed Stephen Geller, the screenwriter. He wrote the scripts for both of those movies. So that comes out January 25th. Blu-rays of the Charles Bronson movies, the Valachi Papers, and the Valdez Horses.
Tell us
and then
about,
I'm working.
Sorry, what about the American releases that you did last year?
Okay, yes. Last year I did, for the company Scorpion Releasing, I did commentary tracks on the Blu-rays of The Mechanic and Death Wish 3. So those can be found. They're Region A. They're made for the American market. They're Blu-rays of The Mechanic and Death Wish 3. Those are brand new transfers, 2K transfers from the original Interpositive. So those look fantastic. And on all my commentary tracks, I spend many, many months researching the material.
You're a thorough man. I appreciate it. And thank you for talking to me today.
Okay. Thank you for having me on the show, Michael.